Welcome back to the Higher Power Travel Channel. And if you've been to Portugal or heard of Portugal, I'm sure you're familiar with the islands of Madeira and the Azores. But have you heard of the islands of Berlengas? Perhaps not, but they are located offshore in the Atlantic, about an hour north of Lisbon. And if you've been to the famous surfing spot known as Nazaré, where I am here now, you can actually see these islands off the coast of Nazaré. There are 7 islands that make up this archipelago, and so they are known as the Berlengas Islands, but the largest of these is called Berlenga. And in the summer months between May and October, you can actually take a boat that leaves daily and go visit this very fascinating island, which is an UNESCO World Heritage Site. So in this video, we are going to share with you how to get there, why you should go, and what you're going to discover once you're there on the island of Berlenga. We are Dennis and Min. Come join us on our traveling adventures around the world. So, as always, before we get into the details of this Berlenga Island, please like and subscribe. We really appreciate that and your support. And so we're going to get right into actually what you're going to discover on this island of Berlenga off the coast of Nazaré in Silver Coast of Portugal. What you're going to discover is a lighthouse that actually has somebody manning that year-round. There's actually a really cool fort, formerly a monastery, that's called St. John the Baptist, and it's also filled with a lot of natural wildlife. There's 1 or 2 native lizards, there's over 100 species of plant life on this island, and a variety of birds. Now, if some of you are wondering about accommodations there, in these summer months between May and September, they actually allow you to sleep overnight on this island of Berlenga. And they have several options, one of which is they have camping options where you can stay overnight in a tent. And another option is you can actually stay in this 17th century monastery turned into a fort, St. John the Baptist, where it is really more of a hostel environment. That's H-O-S-T-E-L, not H-O-S-T-I-L-E, because in the old days, yes, they had pirates and it was a very dangerous place at times. But we're talking about the accommodation hostel where you can actually pay to spend the night there. And then there's also a couple of Airbnb and hotel options. So they're very limited. So I would definitely recommend booking those early as possible. And I'm going to have some of the information for that down in the description below. In addition to the accommodations, they do have a couple of places to eat there, restaurant, cafe, and also they have many, many hiking trails. And it's also known as a pretty popular place to do some water activities. So the water in the summer months is generally very, very clear, similar to what you might experience down in the Algarve. And there's also a variety of hiking trails all throughout the island that you can explore, and you have some great vantage points of the other islands that make up the archipelago of Berlengas. So in this section of Know Before You Go, we're going to get you all the details of how to get to this Berlenga Island. So first and foremost, the only way you can get there is by boat, and all the boats leave from the harbor of Peniche, which is about an hour north of Lisbon. So you can drive there to Peniche yourself, but they do have buses that run periodically throughout the day from Lisbon and other areas around the city to Peniche. And once you get to Peniche, you can go to the harbor there, and from there you can go ahead and take this boat, about a 45-minute one-way trip to the island of Berlenga. I would recommend, especially in the peak of summer, that you get your tickets online ahead of time because seats do fill up quickly. Min and I went to Berlengas just for the day, so it's a wonderful day trip. And typically these boats are leaving the harbor in Peniche between 10, 11, but there's also a little bit later sailing in the maybe between 12 and 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And they usually are leaving the port of in Berlenga between 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes a little bit later depending upon the time of the summer. Again, I would not recommend waiting until the last minute to get your tickets. And if you are spending the night in Berlinga, either at the campground or at the hotel or Airbnb accommodation, again, I would recommend getting your return boat ticket back to Peniche as early as possible. If you are traveling there just for the day and it's May or September, you're not going to be in the real peak of the high season. So it is possible you could just show up and get your boat tickets to go to and from the island of Berlenga same day. But I would still recommend going online. So there's a variety of boat tour companies that you can find online. Now, the price is going to vary slightly from one company to the other because there are at least half a dozen companies that will take you by boat to Berlenga Island. And so they are going to range between 12 and 20 euros per person. And kids are going to range between 8 and 15 euros for a one-way trip. They do have a parking area right there at the marina, but you have to pay for your stall. So it is paid parking. So they have these little kiosks that you put your money into for the day. However, we found a place just outside of the marina where the parking was free. So that is an option. So it's a little bit around the corner from the marina. We're going to have some video here showing you the distance between the marina and the parking area. Do note that for whatever reason, I don't know, there was a series of seagulls that must have had some bad fish and had a really bad case of diarrhea, because when we came back to our car, it was covered in, it wasn't a pretty sight. I never actually had my car bombed like that ever. But so just note that, when you park in this parking lot, there is that possibility. So as I said, it's about a 45-minute boat ride from Peniche Harbor to the port in Berlenga. Are you susceptible to getting seasick? The currents and the weather sometimes can be a little bit rough. And so I would recommend, if you are prone to getting seasick, definitely take some seasickness medication before, because I'm not prone, but even when we were going there, the seas were a little rough and I was getting a little bit queasy. I didn't get sick, but I had a little bit of a sick feeling, if you know what I mean. So just be prepared for that. It's an exciting sight when you start to see these islands become closer and closer, and of course the island of Berlenga. So once you get there, you're let off the boat and there is a cafe that is right there. So if you're hungry, thirsty, they've got you covered. And then right across the way, they also have a full-fledged restaurant. And so you're not going to go hungry on the island there. Now, once you're there, you'll be greeted by people that want to sell you these additional tours of the island. And I would recommend it. One thing that we did is we paid, I believe it was 10 euros a person. And it's an additional small boat ride where they take you around the southern part of the island and you're able to explore these really cool caves and other rock formations. And you get a very cool glimpse of St. John the Baptist Fortress from the ocean perspective. So that was really cool. And they do that throughout the day. And so you can just book a particular time of the day with them. You show up there a few minutes early and you get on, and it's again limited to maybe 6 or 8 people on this small boat. And they're able to get you into some pretty cool locations around the southern part of Berlenga Island. Now, the monastery, which is St. John the Baptist Fortress now, has an incredible history. It's a few hundred years old, and there was a very famous battle. I don't want to spoil it for you, but if you take this tour on the boat, they will tell you about this famous battle similar to the Alamo, if you're American. Very, very cool story. And it's only about €1 to actually go inside this monastery once you're on land into the fort. And they also have an active hostel. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. You can book ahead for accommodations to stay in this hostel overnight. It's a very cool place to walk around. So even though it's an active hostel, they have these other public areas that you're able to access the fort from the interior. And you also have a great viewpoint where you can go on top of the roof and look around and have some great views from up there. If you're interested in booking a room at the fort, it is roughly between 70 to 130 euros per night to stay at that hostel inside the St. John the Baptist hostel. And though you do have to make reservations, camping is allowed also, and that's going to range between 10 and 20 euros per person per night, depending upon the size of the tent and how many people are in your group. One thing is that if you are camping overnight, just know that the cooking is not allowed. So you will have access to the cafe and the restaurant nearby, but you cannot cook your own meals. And please be sure to bring some water as well, because that's somewhat of a limited resource there. They say the tap water is really not that, it's drinkable, but it's not recommended. So definitely bottled water is the way to go if you are traveling there, or if you are purchasing water, make sure it's in a bottle. One of the biggest landmarks, of course, on Berlenga Island is its famous lighthouse. And this was built in 1841, and today it is actually powered by solar panels, and it also is about almost 100 feet high. And it's visible up to about 150 feet away. And we can actually see, on a clear day from Nazaré, we can actually see this lighthouse from our home. Min and I had a great time just strolling around the island at a leisurely pace, exploring the St. John the Baptist Fort, and also just going along these trails and seeing where they would lead us. And boy, there's a lot of birds that you're going to see along the way. And just the natural beauty that's there and the remoteness of it is just a really cool vibe that we took in. And we would definitely recommend going to Berlengas on your next visit to Portugal. You know, Min and I really love living in the Silver Coast area because it's not busy, it's not a lot of traffic, there's not a lot of crowds. But when we went to Berlengas Island, it was even more of a getaway because of its remoteness. And they only allow so many visitors per day, at the island. And it was in May that we were there, so it wasn't a crazy busy time like July and August can be. So even more so, it almost seemed like we had the island to ourselves in a way. So we had a great time just exploring around and walking in the trails, and just the breeze was always there. Sunny day, and the water was just magnificent. And the highlight, of course, was, I think, going to the St. John the Baptist Fort and taking the little boat cruise along the southern coast, and also enjoying a nice Lagunitas beer at the end of our day as we were ready to depart back to Peniche. And if you're a Lagunitas fan like me, it's hard to find that beer over here in Portugal. So I was really excited that they had it actually on tap even. So what a treat, what a way to end the day. And just know that I'm not getting paid anything from Lagunitas for sharing that information. But we hope that you appreciate this content, and we had a wonderful day. I'm going to drop some of the links for your visit to Berlengas Island in the description below, so check that out. And thanks again for subscribing and liking and commenting, and let us know if you've been there or if you're going. We'd love to hear about your trip. And until our next video, happy travels.